You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday 12th of September 2014. Top Birmingham surgeon Nafees Hamid in trouble for touching the private parts of 10 women. 2/3 of West Yorkshire Police child sex investigations are in Bradford. An interview with the President. For Assad, US plan will weaken one foe but bolster others. Syria, Iran slams US strategy in fighting militants while opposition welcomes airstrikes. Russia warns US against strikes on Islamic State in Syria. Thought for the day, a true gent. And finally, 2 for 1 day Friday. UK News. Top Birmingham surgeon Nafees Hamid in trouble for touching the private parts of 10 women. A top neurosurgeon sexually assaulted a string of vulnerable female patients at 2 hospitals where he worked, a court heard. Nafees Hamid, 50, allegedly touched the private parts of 10 women he was treating and also made sexual remarks to them. Prosecutors said he betrayed his profession by performing the inappropriate and unjustifiable examinations for his own gratification. Hamid was sexually aroused while he examined his patients and asked one of his victims to perform a sex act in front of him, it is alleged. Jurors were told the 50-year-old removed the clothes of his female patients himself while they were alone in his treatment room. The offences allegedly took place while he worked at Birmingham's Queen Elizabeth and Priory hospitals between 2009 and June last year. The court heard he trained in Pakistan before moving to the UK in 2000, where he got a job at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Hamid, from Moseley, Birmingham, denies 6 charges of sexual assault and 8 other charges of a serious sexual nature. World 8. Why do we continue to give specialist jobs to these animals? Don't we train enough of our own kind? Two-thirds of West Yorkshire Police child sex investigations are in Bradford. Of the 65 cases police are currently examining, 45 are in the Bradford district, which is said to be facing a significant problem. A team is also being put together to re-examine some historic Bradford cases and speak again to some of those involved. And West Yorkshire Police and Crime Commissioner Mark Burns-Williamson made a call for experts from councils across the county to meet him to discuss best how to tackle the issue. He said a culture of inaction and ignorance, which led to victims being failed on an industrial level, had been laid out in the independent report into child sexual exploitation, CSE, in Rotherham, which found 1,400 children had been victims of abuse. We have 65 live investigations ongoing into CSC in West Yorkshire, but that demonstrates the amount of work being done, he said. Here in West Yorkshire, we are doing our best to work together to stamp out this crime and recognise when it is being committed. Superintendent Vince Firth of the Bradford Safeguarding Children Board said there were 43 victims we are concerned about and 67 men on bail for CSE offences. World at 8. How can anyone in the UK stamp out these crimes when we are virtually encouraging these people to not only still enter this country, but still helping them when they get here? How can one erase a part of a so-called culture which is endemic throughout the world of Islam in one form or another? Stamp out the root of the problem. That is the answer. Now there follows an interview with Nick Griffin, President of the British National Party, who pours oil on troubled waters. Hello Nick, and how are you?
Well, obviously, personally I'm very well, but obviously I'm very, very concerned about what's going on with the party at present.
Which is understandable. We understand that you're going to be going off soon on a flight, so I'll be very, very quick. And thank you very much for sparing the time to appear on World at 8. My first question is, how did your very succinct and private report get out to the general public? And can you tell me your personal reaction on this?
Yes, Lynn, obviously, I don't know about succinct because it's a 36-page report, which, as you know, I sent to Adam Walker and all members of the Executive Council and only the Executive Council, now some weeks ago in fact, saying to people this is an executive issue and it shouldn't go any further than that.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased to say that there was enough discipline and it didn't for quite some considerable time. It has now, of course, leaked into the public domain on Facebook and so on, which is regrettable in one way, that this should all have been dealt with by the governing body of the party, which is the Executive Council.
Immediately at the time, of course.
At the time, or very promptly, a meeting should have been called, clearly, because there is a crisis, it's blatantly obvious, and it was for the executive, that's the governing body of the party, not the leader, and we should have had a meeting to thrash it all out and avoid this where we are now. Because that meeting was refused, I think it was inevitable that someone was going to lose patience and say, well then, this is now, it's got to be for the rank and file of the party to decide, because this is a crisis. I don't know who leaked the report. I think that there's at least one person in the clique that have seized control who's not just doing it for themselves, they're actively out to cause trouble for some reason or another. So the leak could have been from them. It certainly wasn't from me, and I don't know who leaked it. However, it was certainly coming on for the time that this went wider, because, you see, when I said it's for the Executive Council to decide, I was working on the basis that that would be the Executive Council as constituted until recently, and without any intimidation or changes. And as you know, that's not now the case.
No, that is true. Which actually brings me on to my second question. The various officials and members who have been not sacked, but they've been removed from the Executive Council with obvious reasons in mind. What is your opinion on this as a president of the party?
Well, I think that sacking is actually absolutely the right word for it. Obviously, there's a growing wave of disciplinary actions and expulsions of various people.
I know!
And in terms of the sacking, of course, you're one of them. It's very significant that you've been replaced without warning as South West Regional Organiser, even though you were, I believe, aiming to hand over.
Yes, I had an arrangement with Clifford Jones to actually hand over in January, which was between him and me.
Yes, but of course being removed now means that even if we get this promised Executive Council meeting,
I can't sit on it. No.
Sometime in November, you can't sit on it, and Chris Thornton, who very significantly is the North East Regional Organiser, appalled by what's going on, and has been removed for no good reason whatsoever. So straight away you've got people being removed who happen to be the people who said, look, we need an EC, and failing that, or as well as that, we need an emergency general meeting to let members decide. And we don't appear to have a leadership, we have a dictatorship. If you don't agree, you don't toe the line, you're immediately out. On top of that, we now know that they're not only refusing an Executive Council meeting, they've also said that there's no chance people, quote, can jump up and down all they like. That's the members. The people who pay their wages can jump up and down all they like. We're not getting an EGM until sometime in November, and they haven't even fixed a date for it yet.
No. And of course, apart from that, I was actually speaking to Adam the week before he rang me up and asked me when I was going to hand over, and I said January, and he didn't say a word. He just said, oh, well, thanks and goodbye, sort of thing. And the next thing I knew, I got a registered letter. It wouldn't have hurt him, Bing's manners, actually, to say, I'd rather bring the date forward. I would have said, yes, well, fine, I couldn't stop it. But it was a done deal, and of course now he's also appointed a regional chairman for the South West, which is unheard of because they do have to be elected.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, well, there's all sorts of things going on here. In terms of decency and common sense, how long have you been doing World at 8? I know you've got a very loyal and enthusiastic core listenership of hundreds every single time.
Yeah, we do.
How long have you been doing that for them?
I've been doing that for 6.5 years. 6.5 years,
it's 3 times a week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 times a week. Virtually without break for 6.5 years. Well, I think that says it all. My guess is this will be the last one. And, we as you know, we discussed what we should say here and decided that, this is not the place to wash the dirty linen in public.
No.
And there are plenty of problems that need dealing with, but it's not for the public to listen to. I'm doing this, we're having this discussion for the members, the activists, the officials.
Yes.
Understand that this really is a crisis which threatens the very existence of the British National Party.
It
It
is.
certainly is destroying its claim to be a democratic party that listens to its members and so on. And the only way now to address this, it isn't to get out and he said, she said, all over the internet and so on.
No.
But it is simply to say we have to have an EGM so that people can say what's being said, so people can be told what the score is, and so that the members, the people who actually make the party tick and pay for it to exist and progress, the members decide where we go from here. I don't want to go leader back. I think that what's needed is an immediate leadership election.
Yep.
Where Adam Walker can stand if he wants, but I think there's other people should throw their hats in the ring, and again let the members decide. And if they're happy when they see what's it's not really Adam Walker, it's the people running the show. When they actually see what they've done, if they're happy with that, if they're happy with them axing people left, right and centre, reducing the website to a shadow of its former self, and one of the things, if they're happy with that, then let them elect Adam Walker. But if they're not happy, let them elect somebody else, and that'll be my recommendation.
Well, I think the recommendation is actually very sound, and I think to have an EGM would be a far better move than having an EC, mainly because the EGM, as you say, includes all the voting members, the people that pay these people's wages, and the fact it does no good to really decimate the Executive Council if the idea is to make it a room full of puppets.
Yes.
Because it isn't the way to run a political party, it isn't the way to run a corporation, let alone a political party.
Indeed not. Indeed not. And I say I can't stress to people. We wouldn't have done this. It's going to cause there's enormous problems in the party. This conversation will be picked up probably by people who wish the party no good at all.
Oh, exactly.
But it has to be said, because as it is, the party is on a collision course, a crash course to total disaster. And the only thing that can turn it around is if there's an EGM where it's thrashed out and the members decide. And at that point, some people, one side or the other, won't be happy. But they will have to be bound by the Constitution. And providing there's a free and fair discussion and then very promptly an election, then the losing side will have to, and certainly should, and everyone will know that it should simply get on with it and accept the wishes of the majority of the party. But at present, we're not even being allowed that. There's this little group in charge saying people can jump up and down all they like. We're not going to do anything. Meanwhile, things go back from bad to worse.
Now, to wind up, Nick, this very short but very succinct report, what final words do you have to say before we go off air?
Well, then, I'm aware, you're aware, all our people will know just how a huge number of people within the party over years have sacrificed so much for the British National Party and for our cause. It's not just money, it's not just time. People have had their windows put through by the far left, they've had their cars attacked, they've had their kids bullied at school. People have been to hell and back, people have been divorced because of their love for our party and our cause, and their commitment to carrying it forward. We can't let that go. No, you can't go off and form something new. We have to do everything we possibly can, using the Constitution, to save the British National Party and get it back on track. And I'm not asking people even to make decisions on my report, although I know plenty of people are reading it, or what other people say about it. I'm simply asking them to accept the blatantly obvious fact that there's a crisis in the party, and the only way to sort it out now is to have a really urgent, rapid emergency general meeting and let the members decide and save the British National Party.
That's right. Thank you very, very, very much, Nick, and do have a good break or wherever you're going, and a good flight. I'm
not on a break, Lee, and I'm off on a nationalist conference because the fight goes on and there's different levels to this. I know that a lot of people, by the way, are going up to Rotherham on Saturday for the latest protest to keep up the pressure to sack the Labour creep who oversaw the institutionalised turning of a blind eye to an abuse of 1,400 of our girls. Rotherham is not the only place. It's gone on in every single country, in every single town and city in Britain.
Oh, yes.
With a population of those people. People shouldn't take their eye off the ball. Whatever you think of what's going on at present, get up to Rotherham, get to that, get active, get out there and spread the word, because in the end, the petty ins and outs of nationalist politics are nothing like as important as the cause and the thing for which we fight, which in Rotherham this coming weekend is justice for those kids and justice for their families, and to make sure it's stopped and doesn't happen again.
Lovely. Thank you very, very, very much, Nick, and good luck.
Thank you, Lynn. Bye.
Bye-bye. World news. For Assad, US plan will weaken one foe but bolster others. By striking Islamic State in Syria, the United States will be weakening one of President Bashar al-Assad's major enemies, but the new US strategy may still unnerve Assad by helping other opponents determined to overthrow him. The US strategy for tackling Islamic State in Syria is unlikely to yield quick results. Unlike in Iraq, where US airstrikes were able to quickly roll back some Islamic State advances, Washington has no strong partner on the ground. But in a war that has already lasted over 3 years and killed more than 190,000 people, the US plan looks set to bring with it the most serious effort yet to bolster what is left of the fragmented, moderate opposition to Assad. President Barack Obama, in a major policy speech on confronting Islamic State, said on Wednesday he would not hesitate to strike the group in Syria, where it has taken over swathes of territory in the east and the northeast. He also ruled out the idea of cooperation with the Syrian government, which some analysts thought would be an eventual outcome of the fight against Islamic State. World at 8. Obama is a fool and Cameron is his puppet. To bomb another country for whatever reason, you need the cooperation of that country's government. Are Obama and Cameron short on memory and manners? You liaise, mateys, you liaise. Syria, Iran slam US strategy in fighting militants while opposition welcomes airstrikes. Syrian and Iranian officials criticised the Obama administration on Thursday for excluding them from an international coalition coming together in the battle against the Islamic State group, while a state-run Syrian daily warned that unauthorised US strikes on Syria may trigger the first sparks of fire in that region. Syria's main Western-backed opposition group, meanwhile, welcomed President Barack Obama's authorisation of US airstrikes targeting, for the first time, the extremists inside Syria, saying it stands ready and willing to partner with the international community to defeat the militants. But the Syrian National Coalition said that airstrikes need to be coupled with a strategy for ultimately toppling President Bashar al-Assad. Kurdish politicians in Iraq similarly praised Obama's announcement of wider airstrikes and assistance to Iraqi forces. "We welcome this new strategy," said Hoshaya Zabari, a Kurdish politician and one of Iraq's newly appointed deputy prime ministers. "We think it will work with the cooperation of the indigenous local forces like Iraqi security forces, the Kurdish Peshmerga and other forces. There is an urgent need for action. People cannot sit on the fence. This is a mortal threat to everybody," he told the Associated Press. World at 8. Who the hell is the Syrian National Coalition? Sounds like a step towards ISIS to me. Speak to Assad and whomever is in power in Iran, not the Kurds. They have an axe to grind in all of these countries. Russia warns US against strikes on Islamic State in Syria. Russia has warned that US airstrikes against militants in Syria would be a gross violation of international law. A Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman said any such action, without the backing of the UN, would be an act of aggression. The US President has spoken directly about the possibility of strikes by the US armed forces against IS positions in Syria without the consent of the legitimate government. Ministry spokesperson Alexander Lukashevich quoted as saying, "This step in the absence of a UN Security Council decision would be an act of aggression, a gross violation of international law." Syria also repeated its warnings that the US had to coordinate with the Syrian government before launching airstrikes on its territory. Any action of any kind without the consent of the Syrian government would be an attack on Syria, National Reconciliation Minister Ali Haidar said on Thursday. Last month Syria offered to help the US fight Islamic State, however the US ruled that out. World at 8. Once again, one cannot use bombs against a country unless one has the permission of the elected government, not a band of jihadist morons. Raise your game, US and UK. Talk to the right people. Solve a problem instead of creating another, more serious one. The Russians are quite right. Thought for the day: how the Brits handle Muslim sexual grooming. Below is an email from my good pal Edward. Lynn and all, on Friday 29th of August I paid a visit to my local cooperative food on Hanbridge Avenue, Bradwell, Newcastle-under-Lyme, Staffordshire. Whilst queuing to be served, I asked one of the assistants about what she felt about the awful Islamic child grooming that had taken place in Rotherham. Straight away I was shouted down for being a racist and that everybody has a right to do whatever they please. The girl subsequently refused to serve me. I have recently paid a visit tonight again for my regular lottery ticket purchase and was informed the management has barred me. I subsequently have telephoned the shop to make inquiries about why. Now follows a transcript of the conversation taken from a covert recording made from my own phone. Please find an enclosed copy of that recording. Hello Bradwell, Co-op speaking. Oh hello, I say. Hello. I came in earlier on and someone's told me I've been banned. Yeah, that's true. Oh, could you tell me why? Who's speaking, please? It's Liz, the store manager, and you were abusive last week to the staff and to a customer, which we've had customer complaints against you. Right? So, on what grounds? You were racist and were abusive to some of the staff. I would say it's not that we don't accept that behaviour. So you don't accept people condemning child sex abuse, you mean? You can have your opinion. It's not my opinion, it's the truth. Well, that's your opinion. Yeah. I'm not disputing if it's the truth or not. Oh, it is the truth, we know it's the truth. Well, that's still your opinion. Can I have you got the number to your head office, please? Your head off should be on the receipt. On the receipt? Yeah, there'll be nobody there at the moment, but you can phone them in the morning. Absolutely, I'll give them a tinkle in the morning, because I want to know what the company position is on condemning child sex abuse and why it's not, That's not why you were banned. You were asked to leave the shop for you were abusive to the staff. Because I accused them of being appeasers to child sex abuse, you mean? That's not the issue. You were abusive to staff. You swore at them and you were abusive, so there were witnesses to say this. That's fair enough. But unfortunately you have to basically stamp down on people who condemn child sex abuse in the Islamic community, you mean. You can have any opinion, it's not my opinion, I'm just saying that's the idea. It's your opinion, it's not my opinion. Then the conversation wears itself out. How ridiculous does institutional political correctness have to prove itself to be? You are a racist for condemning Islamic child sex abuse and abusive to staff for calling them apologists for Islamic grooming gangs. Is the crime of publicly condemning paedophilia the reason why paedophiles have got away with it for so long? Because as I have discovered to my own peril, this turn a blind eye and shut up about it attitude to cultural sex abuse can be found in non-Asian corner shop near you. It's not strictly a bureaucratic get-out clause for apprehensive civil servants walking on eggshells with Islam. I have now got to go elsewhere to purchase my lottery ticket. All because I abhor child sex abuse, abhor those who perpetrate it, and I don't care who I offend in the process of expressing my feelings about it. If it is racist to condemn cultural child grooming gangs and abusive to pull up apologists for abusers, then I'm a racist through and through, darn well proud of it, and I hope I offend as many apologists as possible. A condemnation, though, of as merely an opinion by self-righteous hypocrites. It's a good job I have a blind person's bus pass that gives me free travel to somewhere where I feel welcome. It isn't even that stiff upper lip thing, it's an institutionalised political correctness. Theresa May spoke of it at the dispatch box this week and it freaks me out. Yours sincerely, Edward. Now I have several of the follow-ups to this sorry's tale, and yes, Edward is a registered blind person, and I first heard from him a few years ago when he said that the World at 8 provided him with an insight into the nationalist world as he was able to listen but not see. Edward and I have kept in close contact ever since. This man is a good man, like many of our members, a man who is not a racist knuckle-dragger or a thicket. He isn't a political butterfly who flies from one party to another on a whim, and he isn't a fascist dictator. He is a good and faithful nationalist. This is why for this to happen to him is terrible. He is not only being shunned and prevented from shopping near his home and safety net, but being abused as if he is the one doing the crime. This sorry tale finishes with a sad advert for the patriotism of this country amongst the working class, who are the ones who suffer most from immigration and the multiracial society. Lynn, it's my local co-op for God's sake, not some Asian corner shopkeeper with attention seekers syndrome. The girl who works in there are white English to my knowledge. I never thought of being condemned for expressing my distaste at cultural child sex abuse as racial harassment, as the ones harassing me are my own kind. But I suppose if they're going out with or knocking the odd Asian off or something, then it may be the legitimacy of their involvement would be perceived as being criticised by their conscience. God knows, it takes all sorts to make a world. I just get the impression that they are trying to be overcautious with political correctness. It seems to be a metaphorical case of the old, what are you looking at me like that for? But in this case it's, what are you saying like that for? What are you saying that like at all for? Fuck knows. Ironically, I've been in the co-op for the next village for my pipe tobacco and co-op's own brand of white wine. I was served by assistants who don't know. The thing I want to know is, who was the spineless creature to snitch on me to them but not have the balls to tell me to my face? Because I cannot recall talking to any other customers, only the assistant who was preoccupied with kicking up more of a scene with her colleagues than the scene she accused me of kicking up. Bless you, Edward, for taking up the cudgels against these terrible and in many areas ancient crimes. In fact, virtually most of them would be cold cases now. You are blind, of course, but not so blind as those who will not see. You have the guts to express your thoughts in a civilised manner and without someone standing at your back with a placard or filming you for TV news. That takes guts. And it is the sort of guts we need in Britain today. The old National Front guts, the old EDL guts and the old BNP guts that carries through to the common people on the ground. If you want to know what the plods did, the answer is absolutely nothing. Vis-a-vis this email from Edward, Lynn and all. I've called the local police on 101 to seek clarification on the law concerning the open condemnation of Islamic child sex abuse. That I have been banned from my local co-op for this and accused a member of staff of being an apologist for Islamic practices. And well, that's just it, nothing. I dobbed myself in for committing an allegedly racially motivated offence and was not asked my name, address or anything. They, the police that is, even asked me what I wanted them to do about it, and then subsequently advised me, an alleged criminal by my own admission, to go and take my custom elsewhere, and then hung up on me. No knock at the door, no arrest and no jail sentence, absolutely nothing. I am totally flabbergasted at their response and stuck for words. Given the evidence I've gathered so far, I leave with the impression that I am not allowed to report Islamic child sex abuse to a policeman on the beat in the street in case there is a third party, Islamic or not, who overhears my conversation and becomes offended by it. If you don't believe me, hear it for yourself. Here is an independent evidence that the police don't give two hoots. He has then attached a recording of his email to my comments to his email, and my comments on that is that there is a lot of talk but no do. It is clear that the police around the Midlands and North have been indoctrinated with diversity rammed so far up their arses that it is flapping out of their mouths, saying, here I am, I'm not a racist or a fascist or a thug, I'm Mr. Happy You Are Here plod. Our Edward has even written to his local paper, and starting with the one paragraph that I personally loved. I have recently crossed swords with the PC brigade at my local cooperative food in Bradwell during a discussion where I openly condemned the behaviour of certain individuals found guilty of mass industrial child abuse in Rotherham. An assistant challenged me in saying that everybody has the right to do what they want and implied that I was being racist. Not to abuse children, I replied, and subsequently accused her of being an apologist. The following evening I learnt that I had been excommunicated by the chief eggshell, upon whom I will apparently walk no more. Thus endeth the lesson of a brave, blind nationalist and the UK food establishment. It is not pretty, is it? And you may all wonder why and how Muslim sexual grooming of underage female children has thrived and prospered in the UK for the last 35 years and counting. The great and ignorant British public. And I mean family, friends, neighbours, tradesmen, shop owners, banks and all the guys on the benefit system and all the and all the whatever they call idiots who are supposed to seek out and deport all the illegals, as well as all the quangos, committees, forums and financial help groups solely for migrants, as well and on of course the various nefarious governments who have made it their business to bring in the bastards in the first place. So all the tripe about evil and it takes one good man to say nothing is also a load of tripe. As one blind man has, and what has he got? A bag full of trouble and worry, all for worrying about one crime amongst thousands that should litter all the consciences if we have any left. Sir Edward Cook of Newcastle under Staffordshire, rise, you are a true gentleman. And finally, 2 for 1 Day Friday. Husband's message. Honey, I got hit by a car outside of the office. Tina brought me to the hospital. They've been making tests and taking x-rays. The blow to my head, though, was very strong, will not have any serious or lasting injury, but I have 3 broken ribs, a broken arm, a compound fracture in the left leg, and they may have to amputate the right foot. The wife's response. Who's Tina? Now, lessons in management. A turkey was chatting with a bull. I would love to be able to get to the top of that tree, sighed the turkey, but I haven't got the energy. Well, why don't you nibble on some of my droppings, replied the bull. They're packed with nutrients. The turkey pecked at a lump of dung and found it actually gave him enough strength to reach the lowest branch of the tree. The next day, after eating some more dung, he reached the second branch. Finally, after a 4th night, the turkey was proudly perched on the top of the tree. He was promptly spotted by a farmer who shot him out the tree. Moral of the story, bullshit might get you to the top, but it won't keep you there. Lesson 2. A little bird was flying south for the winter. It was so cold the bird froze and fell to the ground into a large field. While he was lying there, a cow came by and dropped some dung on him. As the frozen bird lay there in the pile of cow dung, he began to realise how warm he was. The dung was actually thawing him out. He lay there all warm and happy and soon began to sing for joy. A passing cat heard the bird singing and came to investigate. Following the sound, the cat discovered the bird under the pile of cow dung and promptly dug him out and ate him. Moral of the story. Not everyone who shits on you is your enemy. Not everyone who gets you out of the shit is your friend. And when you're in deep shit, it's best to keep your mouth shut. You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend.